Okay, this is intense. Deepseek, the new hyped AI model, predicts a Bitcoin price of $180,000 to $220,000 for 2025 ahead. Let's take a look at what's behind this. Why Deepseek is now ultra bullish on Bitcoin. Also, we have the interest rate decision in the US tomorrow. And there are some exciting backgrounds happening in the U.S. regarding Donald Trump's attempts to lower the interest rates and also to kick Jerome Powell out of his position. There are already some speculations about that. Here, there are some exciting backgrounds. We're going to see if the interest rates are actually going to be lowered or not. Also, we now have Arizona, the first state in the U.S. that has passed a strategic Bitcoin reserve in committee. That means there's just one more step left, necessary to push through the strategic Bitcoin reserve here. In Arizona, I could actually take the lead, and here to be the first state. That is introducing Bitcoin as a strategic reserve at the federal level. And we also have some exciting new numbers here. How much Bitcoin can we potentially expect in such a Bitcoin reserve at the state level in the U.S.? That would really shock you. First, we want to take a look at the interest rate decision tomorrow. Thing is likely to happen that great things are happening. The expectation is 100% that the interest rates won't be lowered. Nothing special is happening. Accordingly, it won't really affect the markets that much. What's going to be interesting here will be after the FOMC meeting tomorrow, so the interest rate decision meeting. Tomorrow, it will be Jerome Powell's speech. He will give a speech. They'll really be looking closely at that. Okay, what signs do we have here? Will interest rates be lowered in the future, or will we stay at the current level? What's it looking like right now? That's going to be really interesting. If he stumbles over his words, it could impact the market. That is here. It has a huge effect on the market. We've seen this before, where Jerome Powell hasn't really handled things very well, and that ultimately influenced the markets. But now there was actually a statement here from Donald Trump, who said, hey, if I'm president, which he is now, then I want to lower the interest rates. He's being asked again. A few days ago, he clearly said, yes, he might also talk with Jerome Powell when he meets him, and we'll basically discuss this. That he wants to lower the interest rates because he will lower the interest rates. That would be positive for Bitcoin again. I probably don't need to explain this to you again. When the global money supply increases, then it goes up here too. Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is very correlated with the global M2 money supply. And that's really, really interesting, because a few people have written about it here. So hey, Ken, Donald Trump even fired Jerome Powell from his position, because a lot of people have speculated. Like Gary Gensler with Donald Trump, he got fired. He was let go because Gary Gensler ended up leaving on his own, but he wouldn't have left, would have kicked him out. Donald Trump got kicked out. And just like that, there are now also speculations here that Donald Trump could fire Jerome Powell here. Wants to, or whatever, just to keep the money printers running, to pump Bitcoin up, to pump up the stock market. Donald Trump has really said it now. Hey folks, I want to pump up the Bitcoin price. He obviously wants to pump up the stock market too. And what do you need for that? You need cheap money, you need fresh liquidity. And there was actually a pretty cool post from Party, who basically researched the whole thing. Is Donald Trump really going to get fired here? No. Donald Trump, can Jerome Powell really be fired here? And it says here, can Jerome Powell be fired? That's the question. According to the Federal Reserve Act, board members can only be removed for cause. This generally means for reasons like inefficiency, dereliction of duty, or abuse of office, not for political reasons or due to disagreements in policy. This clause is meant to protect the independence of the Federal Reserve. Just remember, this Wednesday is the first Federal Reserve meeting since Donald Trump. This is going to get really, really interesting, and it clearly states that here, hey, you can't just kick Jerome Powell out like that, just because there are disagreements here, just because the political views are basically different. That means the assumption that Donald Trump can just kick Jerome Powell out here. That doesn't work. He can put pressure on the SEC chief for other roles. But the central banks, they want to be a bit more independent here. Or it was also the idea of central banks to make them a bit more independent. I mean, in my opinion, if you want to get rid of Jerome Powell here, then there are always ways. I mean, in the political game, we've seen that in the past. If any things are being pushed through here, then you always find ways. They've even staged false flag attacks to trigger wars and stuff like that. So why wouldn't you find some means to do that? To remove Jerome Powell from his position? But that's really exciting. If that were to happen, it would have to happen in a way that's really, really shady and not through official channels. And now we actually have the next story that also involves Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump has Now the evaluation has started that for about half a year, they're checking whether a strategic crypto reserve or a Bitcoin reserve is coming, how the US is positioning itself here. And on top of that, there are already about 15 states now, or something like that. I don't know exactly how many there are now, but it feels like it's more every week. Do we now have a ton of states in the US that want to push forward a reserve strategy? And now it actually says here, Arizona is the first state to pass a bill in committee to strategically create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The bill, supported by Wendy Rogers and Jeff, is now being presented to the state Senate for a vote. That means we're now just one step away from the strategic Bitcoin reserve here in Arizona. That's just incredible. So that means the Senate still has to decide on this. Deciding is crucial here. How many Bitcoins are included here? There was also a statement from Anthony Scaramucci, who once said that it's really important here that it's not just Donald Trump who's pro Bitcoin. That's pro Bitcoin, but that you also have the majorities in the Senate, that you also have the majorities in the banking committee and so on. But we're seeing more and more that there are more Bitcoins in the Senate. In the banking committee, there are more and more Bitcoins. And the more drastic decisions you want to make here. So if you're buying a Bitcoin here, we obviously don't need as strong of a majority as if, say, you wanted to buy 5 million Bitcoins or something. So the more support you tend to have here from various politicians, whether in the Senate or other political offices or in the banking committee, CC, Treasury Department, and the more support there is, the higher the likelihood that these reserve strategies will actually go through. You really need majorities for that. You really need people who are committed to it, who are doing the lobbying here, who are pushing this forward and so on. That's why it's important. And this could really come into effect now. I don't really know what's going on with the Senate and all that in Arizona. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to be voted on, whether it has to be a clear, unified vote or if it will just be a slight majority or something like that. I'm not familiar with the details, but in any case, the voting has now started here. And now we can wait. If Arizona will soon be the first state in the USA, here with a strategic Bitcoin reserve, that would be totally awesome. And actually, I've just received a few numbers here, received from Arthur Trankel, because there are now various, let's say, projections here. What does that mean? Now we had, for example, the Loomis bill, which says, okay, we're buying 1 million Bitcoin. Michael Saylor has talked about 4 million Bitcoin and stuff like that, if you want to completely get out of debt. But now there are basically different states here. They're obviously different, larger, and bigger states can obviously buy more Bitcoin than smaller states. And there are really some very interesting projections here. If we list out different states here, like for example, Oklahoma, and if we take a look here, if we take 1% of the budget from Oklahoma, then they would buy 1,300 Bitcoin. If we take 5% of the budget from Oklahoma, then that would be 6,500 Bitcoin. And this is, for example, a very, very small state. We can take another small state here. For example, Alabama. With 1% of the budget, they would buy 2,000 Bitcoin. At 5% of the budget, this would be 10,000. By Bitcoin, that doesn't sound that big, actually. So when here, Alabama, 1,000 by Bitcoin, right? Oklahoma, buying Bitcoin, that's pretty much irrelevant. I mean, Michael Salem pays for that out of his pocket change. That's pretty much irrelevant here. And I don't think the 5% allocations are going to happen here, but they'll probably start with 1% here. But if we take a look at the bigger states like Texas, if they dump 1% of their budget into Bitcoin, that's already 25,000 Bitcoin. And if they actually dump 5% into Bitcoin, that would be 125,000 Bitcoin. You can really see the scale here, that there are actually some really big states that would actually buy relevant amounts here. And one must assume that it all adds up, that not just one state will buy Bitcoin here, but that different states will be buying Bitcoin. Wyoming, 1% of their budget into Bitcoin is about 500 Bitcoin. 500 Bitcoin. So you can really see how tiny some of these states are in comparison, or how big other states are. And now here's the exciting part when you take the total sum of all the states. And if just 1% of all the states flows into Bitcoin here, then we actually have almost 500,000. Bitcoin being bought here, 431,000 Bitcoin. And with 5% of the budgets of all the states are implementing a reserve strategy. It's probably very unrealistic at first. But let's assume for a moment, all the states are implementing a reserve strategy, buying 5% of their budgets. Bitcoin. Then we have 2 million Bitcoin being bought here. Of course, you have to say that this is all at the current price. If all these states buy Bitcoin, then the price of Bitcoin will obviously go up, and the buying prices will get worse. These numbers aren't realistic. They're a rough view of the cost. They're basically just, let's say, a rough overview of the current purchase price. But if we all buy Bitcoin here, then they'll definitely get a lot fewer Bitcoin. It depends on quickly the Bitcoin price goes up. And now we really have the hyper-bullish prediction from Deepseek, which is currently getting a lot of hype. I already made a video about that yesterday. Why Deepseek could change everything. Why that's also extremely bullish for Bitcoin, even if you've initially sold off your Bitcoin. But why could this turn everything upside down? And it actually says here because someone asked, okay, hey, how do you see the Bitcoin price development for this year? Someone asked Deepseek here. And now here comes the answer. And this answer is really going to surprise you because it actually says here a synthesis of having cycles. So from the whole, having cycle story. On-chain data and trends indicate a cycle peak of $200,000, ranging from $180,000 to $220,000 US dollars by November 2025, with a range starting at $180,000 to $220,000 US dollar. This aligns with historical patterns that indicate moderating returns and institutional acceptance. Here's a note. Predictions are speculative. Bitcoin remains highly volatile. Do your own research before investing. But this is actually very exciting. Giovanni also wrote underneath, who is basically the publisher of the power law model. Hey, that's exactly my prediction. So Deepseek seems to be very much in agreement here. With the power law model, it's in the same range. $200,000 is, but it could also be if things get bullish. Let's go with $220,000. But if it's bearish, we're looking at $180,000 US dollars here. So what Deepseek has already factored in here, that this cycle won't be as strong as the last one. That means Deepseek has already factored this in, just like in the power law model, that we have diminishing returns. So diminishing returns, meaning that the returns from Bitcoin are getting less and less. And what's also interesting is, regardless of the price prediction, this is about the cycle peak when exactly that will happen. So that means we have another bull run here that will last about half a year. So until November, then, roughly speaking, not exactly, but roughly speaking, a lot of people have speculated, okay, will Bitcoin peak in the summer? It will peak in November. Here, DS says it will peak in November. So we don't have a super cycle or anything like that. Are we entering some kind of super cycle? That we somehow have an extended bull run now that just kind of lasts 5, 6, 7 years or something like that. But I mean, Deepseek really can't predict something like that because Deepseek is a data model and it can really only, let's say, describe based on existing data. And in the end, if we take the existing data, we come to 200,000. Just about. And now I actually have a big announcement for you. And it's about TREZOR, the hardware wallet that I always recommend to easily and securely manage Bitcoins, protect yourself from hackers, and much more. TREZOR is offering a limited edition promotion starting January 30th with a Freedom Bitcoin wallet available. January is when it starts. And there will be a Freedom Bitcoin wallet available here. As you can see here, it will be limited. It's going to be a special edition. The sale starts on the 30th, January, and it's expected that these 2,100 limited wallets will sell out very quickly. So definitely mark it on your calendar. Today, I reaffirm my independence. My independence is not just given, but truly earned. Independence is not given, but rather raised. So if you want to be an independent Bitcoin holder, there's no way around the hardware wallet. And like I said, I'm putting a link down below to the TREZOR hardware wallet. Here at the Kurt Bitcoin Hotel, you also get 10% off when you buy a TREZOR hardware wallet. Everything is written in lowercase. I'll also put the link in for you. Here's the TREZOR limited edition video, where you can watch the whole thing in full length. Let me know what you think about the current movements here. Are you feeling bullish? See you later. See you then. Peace out.